Thank you, Wouter. And I'll start out by saying I have the rather dubious distinction of talking about an activity that many researchers don't want to do. So we'll come at it from that perspective. Next slide, please. I thought I'd first start by talking about what we mean by data sharing plans and data management plans. And I'm borrowing some definitions here from other organizations, this one from the USGS, saying that a data management plan describes data that will be acquired or produced during research, how it will be managed, described, and stored, what standards will be used, how data will be handled and protected, and so forth. It does bring up this idea of reviewing and updating data management plans in combinations with events as the research proceeds, and ensuring that the content contains a level of detail such that stakeholders, be they the funders, the project staff, the repository managers, and of course, subsequent users downstream understand what was done and how to utilize that data. Next, please. A somewhat more lengthy definition of data sharing plans comes from the Vice Provost for Research at Harvard. Many of the same elements are here as in a data management plan. And, to some extent, the terms are really interchangeable, although with a data sharing plan, there's a bit more emphasis on how the researchers are going to assure that the data remain available, that they are clear about issues such as privacy and intellectual property, and are there data sharing agreements that need to be signed? What are the formats that will be used? Are they well-established open formats, or are you dealing with data that's in some proprietary format? Particularly, it asks people to think about which of your data sets will have long-term value to others. And then how will you or the repository that you work with ensure that these data are curated such that they withstand changes in storage technologies and data formats. Next, please. So there are lots of benefits of DMPs or DSPs. The most important one, I think, is it gets researchers to think in advance about their data management and data sharing strategy. And this also helps to avoid data loss. If you don't think about this ahead of time, only after you realize, oh my goodness, I've just collected 10 terabytes of data and I don't know where to put it, I don't know where to store it, and I don't know how to share it, then you have a significant risk of data loss and knowledge loss. It also is very helpful if it is available to, say, the chief data officer or the IT department at an organization, because it can aid in capacity planning and budget control. And if DMPs or DSPs are available to colleagues or others, if they're open, particularly in machine readable format, this allows for solution sharing. You can search across DMPs for common instrumentation, common analysis software, storage platforms and repositories, and basically researchers can learn from each other. It's clearly also an asset for improving reproducibility and increasing transparency for research outputs, as we've heard in many of the presentations earlier today. And they support data reuse and additional discoveries, particularly if the data are fair. Next, please. But there are a number of barriers to the generation and maintenance of DMPs or DSPs. Some researchers feel embarrassed. They don't want to expose their poor data management practices or the lack of experience. Others are fearful that their research ideas could be scooped. There might be enough information in a DMP or DSP for another researcher to figure out sort of what kind of secret sauce you're using in your data analysis or your interpretation. I have to say, many researchers see DMPs and DSPs as purely a bureaucratic checkbox. In an era where we're trying to reduce overheads of doing research, many people see DMPs as going in the opposite direction. It's also the case that some templates for DMPs and DSPs are rather awkward to use and may be poorly adapted to the great diversity of research methods. If they're too generic, then they're not very useful. If they're too detailed, people won't fill them in. They'll be scared away from the amount of information they need to apply. Many funding bodies now require DMPs or DSPs, but their evaluation and their bearing on the success of a proposal is far from uniform. I myself have sat on a number of review panels where the proposals had DMPs and they were never discussed by the review panel. Next, please. So I thought I'd illustrate this with a DMP that I like. This is a 2-page DMP written by a colleague of mine who I'll cite at the end. And it addresses each of these key issues. There's general information about the nature of the experiment, the nature of the project being done. Next, please. There is information about the data types that will be produced, the kinds of data processing that will be done, the software suite that will be used in the analysis. Next, please. There's information about how metadata will be generated and shared. And there's information about the formats that will be produced in the project. And next, please. There's information about how the data will be made available for access here through a REST application programming interface. And there's information about data sharing, how the project will make the non-proprietary data available in the FAIR, according to FAIR principles. Next. Finally, there's information about reuse and licensing. So here, the data sets available in this project will be assigned a DOI via data site and will be released with a CC0 license. Next, please. Also addressed here were intellectual property issues. They say really they don't anticipate any, but in any case, the University here of North Florida policies pertaining to IP, record retention, and data management will be followed, and that the data will be preserved for at least 5 years beyond the period of the active project. And I want to credit my colleague, Stuart Chalk, who's a chemist at the University of North Florida, for agreeing to share his DMP with all of you today. So next. So in summary, my takeaways are really these, that DMPs or DSPs express intention. They're not easy to confirm compliance. There's a major curation effort around analysis of DMPs or DSPs and then follow-up to see if the intentions have actually been seen to fruition. But I also want to make the point that DMPs and DSPs need not be exhaustive or exhausting. A 2-page document, structured, well-structured, ultimately we hope machine readable, machine parsable, is not that difficult. And I must say, in my experience at NIST, we have seen people who will spend 10 times the effort explaining why they shouldn't write a DMP than just writing one. So there are considerable barriers. And this gets to my third point. We need to better incentivize researchers to write and maintain DMPs or DSPs. We need to confirm benefits and overcome barriers and share success stories. So again, the real take-home point overall is that the benefit of a data sharing plan is to increase awareness of the researcher's team on how they're going to do this and how they are going to assure that the high value that comes out of their experiment or their simulation or their research project will be beneficial to others. That awareness is the biggest barrier that we face right now as part of the social change that has to take place in the world of research data sharing. So thanks very much.